Hello, I'm Henry, and I watched a movie. Yeah, not a book, but I watched Iron Man 2 and I want to talk about it. When you think MCU, you don't really think world building. World building is coming up with languages and countries and cultures and histories, currencies and types of art and types of music and types of magic. It's naming roads and rivers and towns and cities. The MCU doesn't do this, at least initially, because it doesn't need to. It's our world, so all that stuff's already been done by, existing. Lots of fiction takes this route because it's not only easy, it's safe. You set your story in our world and you don't open yourself up to the countless world building holes you could fall into when creating a world from scratch. Why does this country speak this language? Shouldn't it speak a language similar to those of the countries around it? How can your army be that big if your population and your funds and your food can't facilitate it? If you have magic that lets you teleport, why are there still cars? The safest way to answer all these questions is to not let them be asked in the first place by setting your story in our world. Now, if you have fantastical elements that you want to introduce to your story that is now happening in our world, you have two options. Option one, make all the fantastical stuff secret, like Harry Potter. That way you can give all your magical stuff its own history and lore, whilst piggybacking off the real world's cultural and logical infrastructure. Option two, if you don't want your fantastical stuff to be secret, you need to make public knowledge of it recent. If you want your magical elements out in the public, it needs to happen close to or at the beginning of the story you're telling, because otherwise you have Bright. In 2023, the world will not be the same as it is now if in, say, 1750, magic became public knowledge. So then for those years in between 1750 and 2023, you have to go through the effort of essentially world building from scratch, something you were actively trying to avoid doing by setting the story in our world. But if your story is set in 2008 and all the fantastical stuff comes out in 2008, you're good. This is the option the MCU takes and what we'll be looking at here. And if you don't have any fantastical stuff in your story, then maybe just set it in our world anyway. Though I think it would be a real boss move if you created an entire world as massive and as consistent and as fleshed out as, say, A Song of Ice and Fire, and then just tell like a rom-com in it, or a stoner comedy, or a coming-of-age drama. In historical fiction, there is something called the Point of Divergence. It's a point in time in the history of the real world where the fictional world diverts from it and takes a different path. For example, in the Southern Victory series, it's where Order 191 wasn't recovered by the Union in the American Civil War, and the Confederates go on to win. The non-recovery of orders is the point of divergence, and the story and the world building goes from there. A public outing of magical or fantastical elements would result in a point of divergence, splitting it away from our world. The point of divergence in the MCU is that famous press conference at the end of Iron Man 1. That is the moment the Earth in the MCU and our Earth stop being the same thing, and it's from where the MCU's world is built. Maybe it's the moment Tony creates the arc reactor, or maybe it's his first flight as Iron Man. It's a bit debatable. And yes, there were fantastical elements in that world chronologically before then. Captain America, the Red Skull, Skrulls, Captain Marvel, the Tesseract, S.H.I.E.L.D. We don't have those things in our world, but the key thing here is that in the world of the MCU, they are secret, or at least somewhat secret, or relegated to myths and tall tales. The point is, the point of divergence in the MCU is somewhere in Iron Man 1. Now, whether or not you think the MCU fully and logically explored the ramifications and consistency of its world after the point of divergence, it did, at the beginning at least, try to. Ignoring the Incredible Hulk like Kevin Feige wants us to, the second movie in the MCU is Iron Man 2. And I think it's quite good. The main villain is weak sauce, and the demon in the bottle storyline is sort of approached and then not done. But Sam Rockwell is a delight. The racetrack scene rocks. And War Machine has always been my favourite superhero, so seeing him here after being teased in the first one was awesome. But my favourite thing about Iron Man 2, and what this video is about, is its premise and what it's trying to do. The whole point of Iron Man 2 is dealing with the repercussions of Iron Man 1. I don't think there is a sequel in the MCU so directly linked to its predecessor, and so dedicated to exploring the world-building implications of its predecessor. In Iron Man 1, Tony Stark creates an arc reactor and the Iron Man suit. These are incredibly advanced bits of technology and would, most certainly, change the world. So Iron Man 2 asks, how would it change? Or maybe it asks, how is it prepping for that change? The movie starts with the American government essentially asking Tony for his technology. They understand the implications of its existence and would like to get in on the ground floor of it. They understand that a government with access to arc reactors and Iron Man suits could probably take over the world with very little effort. Tony counters this request by saying that the technology is safe because no one else in the world can recreate it. He then shows videos from around the world of people trying and failing to do just that. That is until one of the MCU's bottom 5 villains shows up. Whiplash is not great. I think you probably could have combined him with Justin Hammer to make one villain who is both a brilliant character and also a credible threat. Whatever. Whiplash has the Stark tech and throws Tony's argument of no one else having it out the window. Whiplash uses Hammer's resources to create an army of Stark tech drones and a suit for himself. A fight ensues, Tony saves little Peter Parker and the heroes win. Yay. This is all brilliant. Within the first 5 minutes, the second movie is showing us the logical implications of the actions of the first movie and sets up what the premise is. The world wants the tech. Tony doesn't want to give it, and the reason he isn't pressed for it is because it's safe in his hands and his hands alone. Then, when that is shown to not be the case, the stakes are raised and the drama heightens. The whole plot is crafted around dealing with the fallout of the first movie and considering and exploring the facets of the world that would have changed because of that movie. It is such a logical choice to make and a genuinely admirable one. Well, why is this all so funny then? Why are Iron Man 2's valiant attempts at exploring its world so adorable? Because the film that came out immediately after it was Thor. Man creates energy machine and flying weapon suit. Let's look at the implications of that. Gods are real. You want to look at the implications of that? Probably not, no. So much madness happens in the MCU immediately after the Iron Man 2 credits roll that the fact that they dedicated an entire movie to what would happen to the world if a rich genius made a suit of armor is retrospectively hilarious. So let's look at all those instances of unaddressed madness. I mentioned it a second ago, but it bears repeating. Gods exist. And not just Norse gods, other gods too. The moment Thor himself became known to the public, the world's entire concept of organized religion should have shifted irreversibly. Why worship a god who you can't see or hear and who does nothing for you when there is one on the news punching a space elf in the face? The super soldier serum. It's made clear that recreating it hasn't exactly gone well. So it isn't really something that could affect the world as a whole. And this is explored in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which behind Iron Man 2 and Civil War is probably the most world-building-y thing the MCU has ever done. My question about the serum is, would the fact that Captain America is superhuman and not just a really good soldier change the way the world looks back at World War II? Aliens are here. We are not alone in the universe. This, like the existence of gods, would change basically everything. Imagine if tomorrow a probe found a plant on Saturn. Do you have any idea how insane the world would go? Now an alien army is attacking New York. Take that insanity and multiply it by infinity. Infinity War. Your entire grasp on what it means to be alive would break. The world would never be the same again, but instead people are like, shrug, I gotta get back to walking it. What happens in Iron Man 3? Oh yeah, lava healing. I know a few of those guys blow up, but don't you think that witchcraft could have been perfected? No, I think it is perfected, isn't it? I think the healthcare industry would have something to say about that. Zola's algorithm will teach you how to revolutionize the second striker position, but the other Zola's algorithm, letting you predict crimes before they happen or whatever, is a pretty mind-bending concept. It is such a mind-bending concept that Philip K. Dick did a load of acid and wrote an entire book about it. Artificial intelligence is a pretty hot topic these days. I promise I didn't use it to write this script. I mean, you'd know if I did, it'd be good. But take a look at the current global discord around AI and think about it if current AI was advanced as Ultron. Shrinking technology has a gajillion applications, some of which are beneficial. You could get inside someone, do microsurgery. Some of which are detrimental. You could get inside someone and make their large intestines small and their small intestines large. But all applications would change the world. Magic is also real, and you don't need some kind of genetic affinity for it. You just need to study real hard. So if you think about it, the Ancient One is slacking off big time. Why train just a select few people? If the whole world has the physical and possible capacity to learn magic, train the whole world. Time travel. Do I need to explain how much of an impact time travel would have on the world? Of all of the enormous things in the MCU casually brought up and just as casually cast aside, time travel has got to take the cake. Someone asked Hawkeye in a press conference, so how did you save the world and bring back everyone who was snapped? And he's like, time travel. That's it. It's over. Life, the universe, everything. Gone. Okay, so those were just the things in phases 1 to 3 that the MCU thought weren't worth exploring. But a Tin Man cosplay and a nightlight, that is something we need to address. Now, in fairness to the MCU, they do attempt some world-building bits and bobs. Civil War handles the subject of superhuman people as a whole and their governance, but not really the global implications of just their presence. Scarlet Witch can accidentally blow up a building, and maybe she does need to be policed in how she is deployed. But does anyone ask if she can be given those powers? Can anyone? It'd change the world if they could. And what about things out of left field? Can she use her mind control powers to affect elections or the spending habits of large groups of people? Can she use her telekinesis powers to start a craneage business or something else that requires moving big stuff? I can't think of anything right now. These are the questions that need to be answered. Wakanda was almost a great bit of world building, with it coming out of the shadows to help the world with its science. But that sort of walked back in Wakanda Forever and we don't really get anything. What if, after Endgame, it started providing vibranium armor and weapons to UN security forces? What if, after Endgame, it started sharing its medical research and technology with every hospital on Earth? The whole world would be completely different, and half the threats in Phase 4 would be ended immediately. They did a bit of Snap admin in Far From Home and were able to expand on that in some of the TV shows, mainly Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The scene where Falcon tries to get a loan is a brilliant bit of post-Snap world building, and I can understand that a whole show focused around things like that wouldn't exactly be the most action-packed, but maybe we need more of that type of thing and not an abyss of CGI nonsense. And then since Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's almost like Thanos never happened. I don't know, maybe it's all addressed in She-Hulk. I didn't watch that one because fourth wall breaking hasn't been funny since halfway through Deadpool 1. The shows also have a massive advantage in this world building field as well, an advantage they don't really utilize. They're so long and they came out after the movies had done so much foundational groundwork for them, but they sort of just sidle up to an interesting idea and then like sidle away. Hawkeye came out in 2021 and had 7+ hours to explore 13 years worth of concepts. And instead it tells a generic crime story that could have easily been set before the MCU's Point of Divergence back in 2008. Iron Man 2 came out 13 years ago and is only 2 hours long, and it still bothers to delve into its world. It still tried. And I, for one, am glad that it did. There is a treasure trove of ideas and concepts in the MCU that the MCU itself introduced but didn't really play around with. And I'm not saying every single sequel should just address the issues raised by its prequel. You wouldn't get anywhere doing that. I'm just saying it's quite funny that they did it once with something that in the grand scheme of things is completely inconsequential, and then they never did it again. Hello, thanks for getting to the end of the video. Like and subscribe and all that. I hope you don't mind me doing a movie. They don't involve me reading a book, so they're a lot quicker to make. So I might scatter movie videos here and there. Next video is going to be Scott Pilgrim 2, then a video about a proper book, then Scott Pilgrim 3. So after Scott Pilgrim 3, there might be another movie video. We'll see. Safe.